Our guest on this episode of Three Food Memories holds the longest tenature of any artistic director of any arts company, nel mondo. A titan of sorts who dives fearlessly headfirst into uncharted waters, both musically and literally. It's his tenacity to break from classical traditions to test and risk-take the radical that's transformed the kid from the gong into a genuine rock star and elevated the Australian Chamber Orchestra into the greatest chamber orchestra on earth. Now that's a biggie.
Who are you talking about? Is that really Nel Mondo? Are you being serious?
Today he joins me in the Nelson here at the Australian Chamber Orchestra to celebrate a year of milestones, the 50th anniversary of the ACO, his 35th year as artistic director, and a significant birthday. This guy's not just fancy, he's fun. Richard Leo Tognetti, AO, welcome to Three Food Memories.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
How did you feel me just reciting all that, rattling all that off?
It sounds like you're talking about somebody else.
But I haven't
And
lied.
somebody, now I'm the same age as old people. Where did you, in the world, the longest
This longest serving
of any arts company?
of any arts
How
company.
did that happen?
Well, you tell me.
I don't know. I can't get another job. They've tried to get rid of me. It's very difficult to get rid of people these days. You know that, don't you?
Absolutely. But especially someone like you. First big question, massive. What's music to you?
Okay, so music is an industry. Look at it. Billions and billions of dollars. Music is an internal space that most people have access to, including people with hearing impediments. Look at Beethoven, Charles Blackman, the Australian artist's wife, ex-wife, who recently passed. Barbara Blackman was blind, but she saw. And so you can find this internal space, and it's the way in which your ears just resonate and create emotion. I think we can still hold on to this wonderful thing called music and call it a human experience. No doubt there's something around the corner with AI, and suddenly they'll be
Are you fearful of AI coming into the music space?
No, not as a violinist yet. No, it's because you'd have to program the robot, the replicant, to express in a certain way, and I think that's probably a few years down the track.
I did ask you what music was to you, and the answer you've given to me is one of community. So you believe everyone has this relationship with music?
Absolutely. I often people say, "Oh, I'm not musical," and I say, "Well, you're speaking to me, you're singing to me, and just the way we're communicating, it's a type of singing, isn't it?" So I mean, the intonation that we're using to emphasize something. You know, when people say, "Oh, I'm not smart enough to learn Mandarin," I say, "Well, hold on, there are literally over 1 billion people who can speak Mandarin and learn the intonation of a language, and it's the access point." So when you're young, if you're listening to music all the time, then you become musical. And remember, there are practitioners and there are listeners, and we rely on listeners.
Would you like to be a listener sometimes?
I am a listener, yeah. I try to be a listener more often, because I really love not knowing the insides of a piece of music, a symphony that I don't know so well, and just enjoying it and not judging it, just being swept away by it.
The ACO must be a very special place. You've been here 35 years.
So why am I here so long? This space is new, fairly new.
This is keeping you, this new development.
Yeah. So it's Pier 2-3 at Walsh Bay. The Harbour Bridge is just there. The Opera House is just there. The harbour is here. And we're on this finger wharf. The Sydney Theatre Company is here, Sydney Dance Company, Philharmonia Choirs, Bangarra, Bell Shakespeare. It's a little arts precinct here in Sydney. And it was a dream of ours, led by our ex-chairman, Guido Belgiorno-Nettis, who wanted to develop this as an arts precinct. And so this 10 years ago looked like it mightn't happen, and then it came to fruition, and now I'm here for even a longer period of time because we need to fill it with content. So,
what did the orchestra look like before you came on board in 1994?
No, I actually came on board in 1989 on trial, and then I was appointed in 1990, I think, in June. It was a standalone orchestra. It was unaffiliated. It was run by the musicians, which it still ostensibly is. It was a string group. We've expanded in many respects the repertoire, but I think the DNA is still the same, and that's important.
So you were appointed as artistic director at the age of 24. Do you remember who made the bold decision to appoint you?
It was going through a bit of a weak patch, and it's often best, as you'd know, if you to take over Neil Perry's Margaret, it would be bloody difficult, right? And so if something's a bit run down and there are some weaknesses, I think it's easier to walk on in and take the helm of something.
Who was the person? Do you remember the group of people that appointed you?
Well, it was the board and the general manager. Look, it was the board and the general manager. Yes, I remember the culprits.
And then what was the conversation? Did you pulled into a room and?
I think I don't remember that particular point because it's quite a complex process. There were a number of different discussion points, and there were a lot of issues. The orchestra was almost broke for a start. There were a lot of vacancies. I think it's fair to say the orchestra was almost on its knees. So therefore, because it was broken, it needed someone pretty bold, and I was bold and young and eager. But I thought I was only going to stay for a couple of years.
What do you think they saw in you? Was it a saviour, a Superman?
No, not at all. I had almost no experience. I had very strong ideas about musical styles and stylistic differences between music from the 18th century, Baroque music, and 19th century music, classical into romantic music and modern music, and that these different styles should be delineated and played in certain ways. And this was quite different and a standout at that time from an interpretation point of view. So I think they were the musicians, the few musicians who were there, and the management thought that this was a distinctive approach. I also made the orchestra stand. I got rid of the rather sepulchral tails and formal dress, and I pretty quickly turned it into a modern arts organisation.
And the audiences would have changed.
Oh yeah, at first the audiences, I think they embraced the energy that I brought to bear, but a lot of them balked at a different approach to programming. Now, people are like, give us more.
Before we open up with your food memories, when was the last time you opened the violin case? Your violin case?
Oh, last night. Yeah.
And can you describe the feeling of that particular moment?
Last night?
Last night's
what
feeling.
What a terrific question. Love, frustration, trepidation. There's an olfactory component to it. Can you imagine this wood? The wood would be, well, it was made in 1740s, so the wood would be maybe from the 17th century. And I often smell it. I often enjoy that extraordinary smell of the varnish, the rosin, and the wood. And I'm always in awe of it, and I never take it for granted. And I'm not being hubristic.
Does the emotion change each time you open it? I mean, how many times a day do you open that case?
Maybe 3, 4, 5.
And each time something different happens. There's this magic that happens within that.
Sometimes I think, wow, I really feel at one, and at other times I think, oh no, here we go. Got to relearn it.
Still.
Oh, yeah.
How long have you had the violin? So tell us
Oh,
actually
this
about
particular violin.
this violin, yeah.
Okay, so this particular violin I've had maybe for 2 years. I've had access to it. I don't own it. It's made by Guarneri. Del Gesù was his nickname of Jesus. And he and Stradivarius are the two most revered makers of all time. Now, those who think that, you can get a modern instrument, sure, you can get a modern instrument. As good? It's a copy. Every modern violin that you see is a copy of either Del Gesù Guarneri, Stradivarius, who is a household name. Everybody, anyone who can read, anyone who's lived in the Western world has heard of Stradivarius, right? Or an Amati and a couple of other makers. So every single modern violin, you can't say, it's better than an old one. What you say is, this particular copy of these old instruments can stand and be judged. But they're all copies. So we've got to remember this in context of people saying, a modern violin can be as good. It's a copy of these great instruments. I've had access to it for about 2 years. They're worth a lot of money, as most people are aware. It's kept in a safe when I'm not playing it. I travel with 16 security guards. The thing about stealing a violin, the Russian oligarchs aren't in the market anymore. We're not sure if the quality has increased with age, because of course we weren't around 100, 200 years ago.
So when you're playing it,
but we think they have. We think that they evolve. When
you're playing the violin, do you feel the people who have played it before you?
No.
You don't?
No. I mean, I would if it were a famous player. Jascha Heifetz, regarded amongst violinists as the king. I wouldn't like to play his violin because I'd be familiar, but not with this one because I'm not even really. There were some. No, I'm not daunted by the previous owners. The one I had before, which was a Guarneri del Gesù, a very, very famous violin. It was owned by a violinist, Ossi Renardi, and he was killed in a car accident. So I often thought about this, but the violin survived.
It's interesting because we're going to get to the Japaneseness of you. The Japanese don't steal, do they? Because they believe there's somebody's karma on something.
Correct.
So you're in Japan and you'll see all these bikes unchained all over the place.
You can leave your wallet on the train. Yeah,
exactly, because they don't want to. I would imagine that would be something similar with a piece of an instrument.
Well, although there are some pretty cool stories about violins being stolen, and some dude at the back of a symphony orchestra who's been playing on a violin for 30 years, and then on his deathbed admitted that he stole an instrument. It's quite rare to hear of an articulated theft, but it does happen from time to time. But the on sale, if I can use that expression, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Hey, you want to buy a violin?
Yeah.
What is it? It's so-and-so Stradivarius.
Well, who's going to get bought?
And what are you going to do with it? And you can never get it repaired because every violin shop would be fully aware of what it is.
Who's going to get through your 16 security guards?
Well, that's another point.
Let's start with your first food memory. Fish and chips wrapped in newspaper, eaten by the beach in Wollongong.
Yeah. Okay.
You can eat fish and chips anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, no longer do we wrap them up in newspaper? But what's so special?
Just that memory, the salt and the sand, they don't create smell. There aren't smells when you can't really smell salt and you can't smell sand. But why is there such a strong olfactory response to salt and sand at the beach? And maybe it's the seawater with the kelp, the seaweed. But it's that smell of chips at North Wollongong beach, and occasionally my mother, who was an early adopter of health food. She was a fan of Adele Davis. I don't know if you remember Adele Davis. And she was obsessed with her, and we used to tease her about it in a most loving way. And now, of course, I really am. I am in awe of my mother, that she was so open-minded and so and absorbed all these new ideas to do with health. And she was a cook herself. She was a caterer, actually.
For a period, yeah.
But occasionally she'd let us, as a treat, we'd have fish and chips down at Wollongong, North Gong Beach, and the smell was just overwhelming. It was amazing.
Can you describe, was the fish in batter, like that really
it was,
thick?
Probably, I probably wouldn't be able to eat it now. But don't ruin my memories. Yes, of course it was in batter. We didn't have crumbed fish back then.
And big chunky chips?
Before the American French fries, came to bear. Yeah, and they were probably pretty good chips. And if this does make it to the UK, then people here know what chips are. But and it was literally in newspaper. And you'd rip the newspaper open, and it'd be steaming hot, and the smells were great. And the fish was probably, as a surfer, not meant to be doing this, but it was probably shark, right?
Shark, they generally are shark, aren't they? We know. Yes, we do know that. And so, what would you drink with this fish and chips? Were you
probably
allowed to have
craving for a lemonade or a Fanta, but we probably had orange juice. I don't know. This is pretty sort of rudimentary memories, aren't they? But they form you sort of.
They do form you. So, does this fish and chip memory come before or after the first time you picked up a violin?
Probably around the same time, when I was about 5.
And so, I mean, Wollongong was full of Italian and Greek people. So, do you remember the shops that you bought the fish and chips from?
Absolutely. Yeah? Yep. So full of not as full as we kids wished for. There was this thing called racism against Italians. So on my father's side, it's Italian, obviously with the name Tognetti, and Irish. And on my mother's side, Rogal Shamansky and Maya, Polish. But carrying the name Tognetti, there was racism. Yeah, you bloody wog was the term back then. And of course we laugh at it now. Like, what? There was racism against Italians back then? Yeah. It was pretty white bread. And thank God for the Italians and the Greeks, because they brought fruit, vegetables, fish and chip shops. The concept of eating weird shit like calamari and octopus, which was really out there, and even prawns. So thank God for the Italians and the Greeks and others who brought all of the plethora of great food, and were also aware of what was in the sea. The bloody Poms. For a start, they built houses with windows like that facing the wrong way, and then they didn't embrace the beach, and they didn't utilize the sea, which to this day, as you know, with those fish co-ops, we don't celebrate what's in the sea nearly enough as when you go to France, Italy, Greece, of course.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It was something of fear, maybe the Brits had for more of a sense of fear when it comes to the sea. I mean, Rick Stein, sort of one of the first. Can you believe it? So, and I still bemoan the fact that when I go to those fish co-ops in, the South Coast, that you've got to ask, is this, when was it caught and where's it from?
Do you prod it? I do. I often find checking the eyes to make sure that they're. I know, right? So with Mum Polish descent and Dad Irish Italian, what did the food look like in the Tognetti household?
Well, as I say, my mother really embraced this new age thing called health food, and she read widely and pretty wildly as well. And we had all sorts of interesting things,
Because there was a thread running through...
Couscous.
Yeah, there was a thread running through society about that time where people were like, hang on, this is not what we're being fed is not quite right. So she was riding that wave.
Oh, and when McDonald's actually came quite late to Australia.
To the Gong in particular.
Yeah, to the Gong. So we didn't have those kinds of big, disgusting American fast food chains, but there was a lot of junk food. I mean, one of the silliest things ever created, and one of the great joke things, is a Chico roll. It's mainly cabbage, isn't it?
It's a fart factory.
Yeah, it's a fart factory. And remember the battered Sav?
Well, that was my nickname for so long. How could I forget it? Of course.
Of course. There you go. They were the fast food, and my mother steered us with great effort away from just filling your gob with stuff like that. But she made really tasty food. But we were the kids, as it resonates, right? For a lot of adults now, we were the kids sitting there with the embarrassing lunch boxes.
Were you steerable children?
Yes. But, it's not about how the kid reacts today and tomorrow. It's how the kid evolves. And, of course, now...
3 boys and...
I am my mother's... a result of my mother's incredible attention to what went into our bodies.
So 3 brothers, right?
Yep.
Are there other food memories for you that evoke the Gong?
Yeah, barbecues in Minamurra.
Yeah.
So Minamurra is a unique spot, I think, because you've got the river, Minamurra River, and then you've got this beautiful sandy peninsula, tiny little peninsula with melaleuca, which are the paperbark trees, and then you've got the ocean. And playing on Minamurra River. So my father was an academic, nascent then, Wollongong University in the maths department, and his maths professor had a little fibro shack, probably paid a few $100 for it. Now we don't talk about real estate. And it was unique, and I use that word deliberately because I can't think of any other place where you find land, river running parallel to the sea, a tidal river, so mud flats, and fishing, and then this, as I say, this little sandy peninsula with melaleuca trees, and then the great Pacific Ocean, the dangerous Pacific Ocean. And we had barbecues, lots of great memories from that, and my mother bringing interesting food to bear on the not so great Australian barbecue. Did you ever see the terrific documentary series, I think it was, on World's Barbecues?
No.
Really compelling. And Australia didn't come across too well. It was all about mateship, as though all countries don't have a sense of mateship, right? But the food was pretty embarrassing. The best, of course, was with the Japanese, South Africans, Americans came across well, and our friends across the Tasman with the hungy. But Australians were just, gas grill, cheap sausages, who cares what's inside them, and a bit of fatty steak and some white bread and tomato sauce. And our barbecues were probably like that, but my mother would bring interesting things to cook on the barbecue.
What would she put on there?
Well, she was an early adopter of plant-based meats, Nutella. Not
Nutella.
Yeah, not Nutella, but I can't remember the name of it, but kind of something that she'd slice, and of course we were
like a meatloaf.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
What was it called?
And she would probably make that if she was.
She made it. Yeah. And so she'd bring all sorts of interesting things to experiment on the barbecue.
You said that your dad was a mathematician, or he taught. What did he do?
He was a mathematician.
Now there is
pure maths. So
So there's a very strong correlation between music and maths.
So they say. Well, I mean, music is kind of like a mathematical language that you have to learn in order to get it off the page into your fingers. So yes, but the good thing about my parents in Wollongong in the 70s was that they were open to so many different ideas. So we played football, soccer, cricket. Also were taken to music lessons. And there also is an important part because not many kids at that stage had the also attached.
Do you think that was a bit of the influence of their European backgrounds? Do you think that was something residual in that?
Maybe sort of some kind of DNA memory,
right.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's fair enough to say.
Wollongong is a place of opposites. I know because my family all come from Wollongong. Beautiful beaches versus the industrial purpose, the landscape, the history, and it still exists there. What makes Wollongong so special for me is its nuances. You really have to understand Wollongong for it to be a special place. You haven't lived in Wollongong for decades, yet it appears quite a lot. Whenever your name appears, it's kind of not far away, something about a connection.
Well, you can take the boy out of Wollongong, but you can't take the Wollongong out of the boy, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I've always had a proprietorial, hey, this is where I grew up. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. And I've got a strong love-hate relationship with it. Whenever I criticize it, the insecurities of certain Wollongongonians rise up. And they should understand that the fact that I am criticizing it means that I love it. And how can you not love it? It's one of the most dramatic places on earth where that escarpment meets the sea, and look how close it is to the sea at Coaldale area. It's really a daunting landscape there, and then it opens up, and then you got those beautiful, rock cliffs, Mount Kira, Mount Kembla, and the exquisite beaches, the small, intimate beaches, and then the headland of Sandon Point, which is of course a terrific surfing spot, and so many nooks and crannies. Perfect positioning for a city, and I just think that Wollongong could have done a bit more, a bit deeper, a bit faster with the urban environment. That's my criticism of it.
So
I think Newcastle, maybe because of it's further away to Sydney. So Newcastle in the north from Sydney is a bit further away, so it's sort of got more a sense of independence, whereas Wollongong feels like a southern suburb at times to Sydney, and maybe I criticise the fact that Wollongong, the urban part of Wollongong, hasn't evolved a bit better.
For me, Wollongong, I've always seen, and I say this affectionately because all my family started their lives, their existence in Wollongong, it feels like a bit of a dumping ground. Because when my family came off the boat, so what you would classically do, you'd make your way through the Suez Canal. We came from Cyprus. Make your way through the Suez Canal, you'd get off at Sydney, you'd come to Circular Quay, you'd find paesani, people from your village or your area, from your country. Where do you want to go? I don't know. And then they'd be then driven to, that row of terraces that exists at the very beginning of City Road, just right near Broadway. So they'd all overnight there.
Wow.
And then they'd be asked, and there they would be with, it makes me cry when I think, stop, this is not my series, this is my show. Then they'd have to then decide where they'd want to go.
Yeah.
Did they want to go into the slums of Surrey Hills, or did they want to give themselves an opportunity that was out of town? And so then they were just sort of, you'd grab your children, thinking my grandmother, can we stop for a second?
No, this is too good. Some human emotion.
Yeah, you'd think
And then they'd choose almost like pin the tail on the donkey, or
kind of, and then they'd get into
vehicles.
For them? Kind of, they were just corralled and they'd go. And fortunately, my grandfather came to Australia 4 years.
So there was Wollongong, Dubbo, Orange.
Correct.
Griffith, of course, for the Italians.
And these were these big, and I drive past these terraces all the time, and I think of my grandmother with her 4 children,
Amazing.
just kind of trying to work out what they're next. But fortunately, my grandfather was here. My grandfather came to Australia and bought a plot of land and built this mud shed on the river at Primby.
Well, exactly the same story, parallel story to my father, my father's ancestors. So my great-grandfather came, I think his name was, my father's name was Stefano, and then his father came and went west and was one of the first to plant grapes west of the Dividing Range. Imagine that, like just getting through all that bush and then, I'm going to drop some grape seeds here.
Did he bring them with him, do you know?
Good question.
Because the Germans did. The Germans, when they went to the Hunter Valley, they had them
probably
in their jacket pocket.
Yeah.
There was no
there you go.
fan.
There you go. Yeah, well, where else would he have gotten them? And if he was the first, but my father made it to Wollongong as through academia, because he was at ANU and then was corralled into going to Wollongong in the early 70s, late 60s.
So for me, I love going to, one of my things about going to Wollongong is going to Cringilla and going to those.
I was going to say, now we need to talk about the southern suburbs, Cringilla. Actually, we were joking the other day. We were saying, of course, when Beethoven went to Cringilla and wrote his 7th symphony, because that's the thing about Australia. We don't have that, when so-and-so went to, America.
Yeah.
Dvorak went to America. Schoenberg went to America. Stravinsky went to America. We don't really have that much, right? D.H. Lawrence went to the northern suburbs of Wollongong, but we don't have, Beethoven went to Cringilla, and all those other names. Some you can't even say them. Those suburbs, Albion Park, and all those immigrants, all those brave people who went there and started a fruit shop, and got, stones were thrown, weren't they?
Yeah,
we know
they
that.
totally were.
And shutters were pulled down. You think a lot of kickback, as in people kicking back. I mean, I kicked back, being called a fucking wog. Yeah.
But you had a decade or so behind you.
Correct. We had a decade. Look, I'm not going to. These were kids being idiots, kids being kids, and it was sort of almost. Almost a distant memory. It's like we've got to remind our generation that our parents' generation still had Catholics on one side of the street and Protestants on the other. We don't even remember that.
No, but we do say kids being kids. But being a father, I actually, with other children, I say kids being their parents. So I'm quite conscious of, what comes out of my mouth.
Yeah, but if you were to call an Italian a wog in modern day Australia, you are just, I don't know what planet you're on. There are other targets, aren't there, which we're fully aware of, and we should always keep it in check. Racism will always exist, but if you had a strange name, a spaghetti sort of name, back in the 70s in Wollongong, you were part of the target group, weren't you?
Yes, correct. And if Wollongong was a piece of music, what would it be?
Meatloaf. A song by Meatloaf. Yeah.
Anything for love, or it could be anything.
If it were there's a funny one, and it's a bit tangential in the sense that if it were a piece of music, it would be about leaving and going to the cross, and then therefore it would have to be Cold Chisel Saturday Night. Because it was all, for me back then, when I was living there, it was all about getting out. Like a lot of people experience that sense of, I've got to get out. But at the same time, my whole life, I've been looking over my shoulder at Wollongong, as I say, with the loving sense of criticism that comes from a place that you know is special. And it is special. And anyone who lives in or around Wollongong understands that the geography that they have access to is extraordinary. And that shouldn't be underestimated.
Your second memory is traditional Japanese dining that you and your wife like to experience. What is it called?
Izakaya. So, and that's where you get, everything. So that's for the common person to go. It's not fancy dining. You can get your hibachi style. You can get your yakitori. You can get your sashimi, sushi, and if you find a really great izakaya restaurant, and we've found the best one in this secret little, everyone's got their secret spot in Japan now, and it's a sort of the kind of restaurant experience where you experience almost family cooking. So that's why we love going to that style of restaurant. Otherwise, you can go to teppanyaki, you can go to specialized, sushi restaurants, but they're amazing experiences, but you can feel a bit blocked because you just have to be ready just to have sushi or whatever cuisine the chef is specializing in.
Is there a Western equivalent of izakaya cookery?
You'd be able to answer that. What do you?
So when is it? I'm thinking, is it an open kitchen where it's?
Yeah, it's an open kitchen.
So are we looking at modern?
Well, it's across a bar,
right?
So there are tables, but the best place to sit is at the bar, looking at the chefs or chef.
Yeah, and will I find these restaurants in Tokyo? Are they regional?
Everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
So basically, and is it the chef? Are we talking about a chef who cooks in this style of cookery? They're multidisciplinary.
Yes, which is
right.
As we know, if you're there are just sushi chefs. I mean, the famous one, of course, that we all know about is Jiro.
Yeah.
His whole life has just been dedicated to getting the rice to, face the right way, to look after his fish, to butcher the fish in a particular way and create the very best sushi, nothing else. Then there are people who just make ramen, and we know that they're the best in the world, these specialists. But I just do enjoy the izakaya if it's really good quality produce and prepared well.
Do you cook Japanese in the izakaya izakaya style?
So
What's some of your favorite?
Well, my just recently inspired by this barbecue documentary, actually, and now you see them all over Sydney. These hibachi style, whether they are hibachi or not, hibachi style barbecues with the coal, and so. My wife Sato, who was born in Japan, she gave me an hibachi barbecue, and it's taken me a good year. I don't have that much time, but to really work out how to deal with the coals, as you know, like it's the timing. You got to get the timing right. And she bought. Well, I needed some charcoal, so she bought some charcoal online, thinking it was a big bag. Japanese charcoal, it costed up. It was like this much.
But are they the cylindrical blocks, aren't they?
Yeah.
With this
you
hollow
can reuse them.
You can reuse them.
Yeah, you put them in water, and I love doing this. I love karage. Everyone knows, Japanese or sometimes Korean fried chicken, but it's a real, skill to make really good karage. And I've been experimenting with different types of karage. So karage, you need quite firm flesh, but if you are going to do fish, you need a firm fish, or scampi was my favorite, actually. I just got it right, and then I tried it again. It didn't work. So
What draws you to? I mean, you spend 2 months every year, and you've got a
Yep.
place in the sector. What draws you to Japan?
Huh. The regard that they have for things, like this specializing in something. The community that you were talking about before, it's just not the fear of going to, eternal hell if you steal something. But after the tsunami in, 2011, they had food aid, and people would take the food and then pass it back. And you find this all the time. It's not just thinking about the self in Japan. And it's that sense of community that it drives a lot of Australians mad. They don't imbibe themselves into the society at all. And I love it. My Japanese is rudimentary. Satu, because she was born there, is...
Satu's not Japanese.
No. She's Finnish.
Right.
But she was born the Finnish missionaries. And so... but she really understands the Japanese character. And when we first started going there, she would castigate me non-stop about my behavior, unaware, wrong chopsticks, chopsticks placed in the wrong place, and just my body language. And being the oafish Westerner, I was insouciant, didn't really care. And now I care, because it's part of the society, and respect is so important. And the Japanese, though, they're going to push back. I mean, they're already starting to.
Well, aren't they? They're charging these extra tariffs or these high extra.
But that's probably a numbers thing. I don't know. But and because Satu speaks Japanese, and so in the onsen, the hot springs, and she can hear, when it's separated out, the men and the women, and she can hear the women bitching about us, and it's embarrassing. Hopefully Australians will wake up to themselves.
There's my understanding is there's quite a tight immigration policy.
Oh, you can't immigrate. I mean, so she was born there, grew up there. Do you think she has any rights to? No. But you can still travel there and stay there.
Another fun fact of Japan is the largest Brazilian population outside of Brazil is in Japan, and the largest Japanese population outside of Japan is in Brazil.
Yeah, and Peru. There's so Japanese workers went to Peru. They got the Japanese, we got the Chinese. Interestingly,
and another thing, Christmas in Japan doesn't really exist.
Yeah, but they acknowledge it, and they have their own little customs.
Well, I found when I was there recently, I found that getting your food from Kentucky, I don't know if you know this, but getting your food from KFC is a really big deal, and there's only certain, you are told which outlets to go to. What's your understanding of that?
Maybe it's their sort of, sense of exotic karage. Where did that come from?
Well, it came from the red and white
mayonnaise
and the Kewpie mayonnaise, and the red and white of the branding of KFC is Christmas, and so that's how they bring it into their house, because none of them cook like that.
No,
the Japanese don't cook like that at all. So they you plan ahead, and sometimes I spoke to some Japanese people. We were to buy out KFC a couple of days beforehand and store it, because we wouldn't have got it on the day.
Nuts.
What's your next visit to Japan going to look like?
Probably just a personal visit back in December. But I was big in Japan 2 years ago for about a month. It's like that. Suddenly get this flourish of performances, and we took our film Mountain to Japan, and we played there, and then it goes quiet. It's so mysterious. It's an enigma wrapped in an enigma. And we always think we're about to break through, and sometimes we do, and we have all these concerts, and then it goes quiet again. So, but we have these little concerts in Niseko that we put on. We still manage to put them on. I would love nothing more than to run a little music festival somewhere in the countryside in Japan, and invite all my friends from all over the world.
Speaking of enigma wrapped in enigma, surfing.
Yep.
So we've had quite a few surfer guests on the show.
Oh, who have you had?
Like comedians and stuff. People like
who surf.
Who surf.
You haven't had professional surfers.
Actually, maybe we should get one on. That's a good idea.
Actually,
Thank you.
there's a foodie. There's a guy called Paul Patterson, I think is his name, from Western Australia, who
We'll grab him.
who cooks. He's quite well known as a cook.
They all say though the ocean is their place of worship.
Mm.
When I think of chamber music played in a church, it has an intimate and refined quality.
Mm.
What interplay do you hear in the ocean?
Nothing.
You hear nothing.
And that's in a very Zen way, at the best of times, I hear nothing, because I've been asked this question, and then when I'm out there, I'm thinking, do I hear anything? And I think, no, I'm in the great void, in a good way.
So does that nothing play out in your practice? Does that Zen?
It does.
So that carries through.
Mm. Mm. And actually, the best state to be in whilst surfing is to be in that sort of neutral state and just absorb things without judgment and without frustration, because surfing is a very, very frustrating sport. Dissimilar to golf. Because, golf, okay, it might rain and ruin your day, but you're just there on stable ground. You know where the hole, the tee off is, and it's all quite predictable, except for your own shots, right? The ball doesn't change. The clubs don't change. I mean, you change clubs, but you know what I mean. Surfing, okay, it's totally weather dependent, winds, and then the sea is moving the whole time. Your board is moving. People can really frustrate you, other surfers, especially if there's aggressive localism and you're trying to catch a wave within that. And there are so many moving parts that it can throw you off your game very quickly, and you can be frustrated. And so it's great practice for maintaining patience and bringing I wouldn't say laissez-faire, because you don't want just to let things go necessarily, but to be able to deal with all of these changing components. So that's what I mean by a Zen kind of like
So to add
attitude.
to those changing components, Richard, you are known for having removed the fin off your surfboard.
Just to make things even more difficult.
Why?
Okay, so our guru, Derek Hind, who is surely one of the most brilliant people I've encountered, and we've made some surf films together. One was called Musica Surfica. So you wouldn't make Musica Golfica. People would laugh at that. But Musica Surfica, see, you're laughing. Musica Footballica. But Musica Surfica, because people think, it's like an art form. And so Derek Hind, who was on the world tour in the 80s, and then became a very important figure in surfing as a writer and he has a sort of certain cult status. He started taking the fins off his board just for fun, and then stayed with it, and then surfed Jeffreys Bay in South Africa, and then we surfed King Island together. And so I started following him just for fun, and then realized I was quite okay at it, and quite enjoyed the extra challenge of it, and sort of stayed with it. I do it concurrently, so I also have fins in my board. I mean, mostly I do, because it's very conditions dependent.
What's the difference in surfing a board that is with fin and one that's without?
Well, you're taking away a lot of the friction that is required to stay on the wave. So when you take off without fins, you just start free falling. And it's controlling that with the rail and different pressure points.
Do you find that when you play the violin?
Yeah, there's if things are going well, you feel friction free. Yeah. But if things are going badly, you feel friction free as well.
So when I think of the kinship between your music and your surfology, as it were.
Surfology.
I just made that
I
up.
like that.
I think of Disney's 1940s Fantasia, where classic music meets imaginative animation. Is there a connection, or am I pulling that out of my ass?
No. Go for it. Keep on running with that.
Is there?
Someone, actually, one of our emerging artists saw that movie recently. So she would be 20. I said, "Stop. Tell me, how was it?" Amazing, incredible.
And so when you think of the original, because it was remastered in, I think, for the 60 years, its 60th anniversary. No, it was the 60th anniversary. Where does music and surfing cross for you?
Posture, stance, finding that zen, the nothingness, the void, where you're just absorbing and not judging, a purity of expression. Playing the violin, it's a strongly physical manifestation of human emotion. And also, as I was alluding to before, surfing has always attracted a musical input. I mean, George Greenough, Jack McCoy, and who recently passed, they were always looking for music. And in fact, Pink Floyd was utilized in a very early surf film.
Would you say, I mean, none of us have favourite children. Would you say that you'd have a preference, one or the other? Do you think of surfing when you're playing?
Oh, no, it's music. I mean, music's,
Music's just everything.
I mean, if I had to, if you're going to give me a Sophie's choice.
No, I won't give you a Sophie's. But do you, okay, I don't want to use the word.
And also, I wouldn't be able to make a living from surfing.
But you've made some good movies.
We've made two really good movies.
Yeah.
We've made three.
We've
made Musica Surfica, which was very successful and has a longevity to it, and The Reef, and The Glide.
And I believe you've got something else in the pipeline. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Let's talk about it another time.
Okay.
No, because it mightn't happen. So,
are you often creating these sort of opportunities, thinking them up?
Yeah. I mean, they're long. They're arduous. Making a film, wow, it's fraught, always fraught.
But the end result?
You're only concerned about the end result, not the process.
Your third food memory, this is a David Thompson food memory. Namprik, I've pronounced that correctly.
Namprik, so water chili, right? Water spice, water chili. So Nam was David's benchmark restaurant in London. I went there with Terry Jones from Monty Python, if you can believe it. And I say benchmark because for David, who became a very good friend, he had to find the ingredients. Can you imagine finding all those
what year are we
Thai
talking?
ingredients? Help me, 90s, late 90s?
Before he opened Darley Street Thai?
Oh, no. Way after. So he closed.
Darley Street.
No, it must have been, hold on, let me think. Yeah, I think it was late 90s that he was there in London. Yep. No, Darley Street Thai closed ages ago. And in fact, I met David Thompson in the last night of Darley Street Thai. Darley Street being his original restaurant.
In Newtown?
In Newtown.
Newtown.
Before he moved right next to our studio in King's Cross.
Bayswater Road.
Bayswater Road. So he had Bayswater Brasserie and Darley Street.
Two wonderful institutions. Where are they?
Where are they? They were, and Neil's Rockpool. They were my favourite restaurants in the world, I think. Extraordinary. And so, and the impact that David had on Neil was profound, because you saw, I think it was this fish curry, and this was the beautiful sort of rapper's delight, if you like, like winemakers were all in it together, and the restaurateurs back there were all in it together, And Neil called it, I think it was fish curry inspired by David Thompson. And of course then Neil had Kylie, who inspired him with the Chinese. But the impact that David Thompson had on our eating habits should not be underestimated. Can't be overestimated.
And
because we have the best Thai food outside of Thailand, don't we, in Australia?
absolutely. But you've had the very privileged situation of being able to travel the world with the orchestra. Are there any, and you've mentioned 3 very great quality Australian restaurants. Anything that's come up to scratch around the world?
I don't have the money. No, I don't go to the Michelin star overpriced restaurants anymore. So I'm a bit out of the loop on that kind of quality. And I never did get to Heston's Fat Duck. And I never did get to the great dining rooms around San Sebastian. So I'm a bit out of the loop, I'm afraid. But I've had dining experiences, tempura in Japan, which, that kind of specialized cuisine, which is next level, of course. But no, as I say, I'm a bit out of the loop. But so David, it was the first time I experienced this numb prick, with the sauce and then the vegetables and the different little condiments and meat and meats around this dish. And David instructed us how to eat it, and I was speaking with Satu, my wife, recently about avant-garde music, which is still alive and kicking somewhat in the classical music scene, and what's avant-garde in cuisine. It's hard to sort of quantify this. And also people don't want avant-garde eating experiences. But with Gay Bilson, who was very much an avant-gardist, and certainly, but she was the grand restaurateur, whereas David was the avant-gardist chef and cook. And he didn't care if you liked it or not. He cooked this food because he believed in it, and he believed that he was sort of elevated somehow. And so I think there was a parallel between classical music, avant-garde, contemporary sounds, and what David Thompson was doing with Thai cuisine.
David produced many proteges. One of my favourite was Marty Boetz. There'd be no long grain without Marty.
Yeah, correct.
In your 35 years here at the orchestra, have you created any proteges?
I think you have to ask other people that. I'd say that anyone who's part of the orchestra, we're all each other's proteges. The thing about the orchestra now is that people don't leave. They're here for
Have you set precedents?
Sorry?
Have you set
Yes,
precedents?
I have, actually, yeah.
I remember I first came across you in the late 90s back at the Opera House, in the bowels of the Opera House. And you were kind of like the young cousin leading this family. It kind of felt like to me it was, Christmas with all the cousins watching you all play. And recently I was here and I saw you play and you looked like the fun young uncle. And it's still there. There is that family. How have you kept your relationship with the ACO so vibrant and family? It's really rooted in family.
The orchestra was formed. The DNA of the orchestra is that the musicians are in control of their own destiny more than a symphony orchestra. And so without them being stressed about it, they're part of the decision-making process, what happens. But at the same time, people need to be led. Otherwise, you get out of control, something that looks like democracy, feels like democracy, but is actually chaos. And so having strong, good management, but that also listens, is important. But the main thing, of course, is the music. And so when we play weak music, the orchestra is weakened. If we're playing good music and we're all in the spirit together, people are happy.
Do the ensemble bring music to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could happen actually even more. But see, what we've got to do, because I'm, of course, in the management, crafting programs, we're structuring a year. So, and that's always difficult. As you were telling me before, running all these different restaurants, which I just can't even imagine. Cooking for 10 people is enough. But, structuring all these things, you need to have the overview.
You've chosen, as your social cause, the ACO Foundation. Tell us about the ACO Foundation.
Well, so it started off as a bit of a succession plan from the board years and years ago, like what would happen if, proverbial buses and so forth. And then we started talking more broadly about, well, what about the whole orchestra? Then we started talking more broadly about audiences. And we realized that we've grown listeners. And how do we create a legacy? So that's what it's about. And we thought, come on, ACO getting into schools? That's ridiculous. We don't have the capacity to do that. And so...
But that's where it all kind of germinates, doesn't it? And the good stuff happens at that level.
Yeah, and it's the most exciting bit. And God, if you want to tear up, I took Satu and I during COVID went out to St Mary's North, where these kids, in
St Mary's North is a western suburb of Sydney.
Yeah, and they're not sinking in money, that's for sure. Money does not buy. I'm not a private school person. Sorry. I mean, I'm all for wealth distribution when it comes to education. I just do not get this throwing so much money into a basketball court in the eastern suburbs when you could be educating 50 schools across the nation. It's the only time, only part of me that feels like a real socialist when it comes to education and health. So we piloted a program where these kids each have access to an instrument, a stringed instrument, and a bowed stringed instrument. So the violins and cellos, let's say. And every morning they play these instruments with good teachers, but it's not like you haven't practiced, you're playing out of tune. It's emboldening them, encouraging them to just make a tune to the best of their capabilities, let's say. Because of course some kids are quite finding the right words these days is difficult, because I don't want to say that, you can't say that they're poor. They don't have access to the same structures as kids in the eastern suburbs, okay?
Yeah.
So let's just put it like that. But this is a level playing field now. And it doesn't matter that some kids take to it better than others. You can't believe, you would immediately burst into tears. It's one of the most powerful things you'll ever see. And every morning, or not every morning, but I think most mornings, they have this music class and attendance is 100%. And their application to other subjects immediately went boom.
What happens?
And it's a no-brainer. Government, just implement it. Just do it. It doesn't cost a lot of money.
What happens to a kid when he or she picks up an instrument?
Yeah, it's this whole world opens up. It's horsehair and rosin and wood. It's tactile. It's olfactory. It's and of course sonic. It's communal. It's weird. And its potential.
Do you find yourself going back to the first when you're seeing these children?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a lovely travel back in time?
Yep. And we're not creating musicians here. We're creating listeners. We're not even necessarily creating listeners. We're just creating experiences that keep kids active. And it's a no-brainer. And we're still finding it a bit difficult to get resonance in government.
I asked you before, do you spend much time being a listener? You place importance on being a listener.
God,
and we're not just talking about listening to music, are we?
Correct.
We have a MFK Serve It Forth tradition here at TFM, where our previous guest serves you a dish.
You're kidding.
We don't have it here, no, it's just metaphorically speaking. Our previous guest, Frida de Guise of LA Donut fame, serves you her famous Aussie pineapple donut. And I believe it's a beautiful, big, healthy donut, if it could be, with pineapple glaze and cream. I think would go really well with your fish and chips.
I'd love
if
to.
Mum wasn't looking.
Wouldn't that be great?
What would you like to serve our next guest?
Let me think. If it's a guilty pleasure, then I'd serve karage scampi.
Our next guest, which we won't publish, our next guest is Alex Perry. So I'll be passing that on to Alex Perry for you.
Amazing.
This is your opportunity to ask me a question. Here you go.
Well, I'd like to learn something from you in the industry, and just to swap notes, actually. So running enterprises, but from bird's eye sort of view, so not being hands-on. And I wonder about this when I am in a restaurant, watching the staff, things going wrong, things going well, how you keep your eye on things.
It's like a conductor in an orchestra, exactly like that. It's a different scale. I think also, and you would appreciate this, it's the rhythm. You maintain a rhythm, and it's that same rhythm and movement the whole time. And unfortunately, if that someone is coming along and interrupting the rhythm, you've got to move them on, because otherwise that whole performance, it is a performance. Catering and cooking for people is a performance. It's like once the curtain is open, it's game on.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful response. Yeah, the rhythm, and you've got to move them on, because we had somebody who really we were discombobulated, and the rhythm was thrown, and we had to make a difficult choice because of that. And the person moved on. They might be happier, and the rhythm recalibrated, and we got back. It
is really all about ensemble playing, and like you said before, you try and create a democratic environment, but that is really hard. That is really hard when there is.
When I say democracy, I mean that people's voices should be heard. That's what I mean by democracy.
But then you've also got to move everyone in the right direction.
But I've also been, especially in the early days, without a lot of experience, under attack, and sometimes I realized, this attacking is necessary and it's valid criticism, and I had to step back and go, okay, I'm out of rhythm. And that's important as well, right?
It's my last question for you. Your lovely people, the people that take care of you, have asked me to steer clear of mentioning that particular age. But here we go. I think I've given enough hints for people to work out what the birth date will be this year. Are you? I often think about people who don't like to talk about their age.
I don't care.
Oh, you don't?
No. Why did they say that? I think they're joking. I think they're pulling you.
Someone's throwing someone under a bus. Doesn't matter. But you've had this. I wonder for you. You've had this really privileged, and I know you don't. Yes. You've shared it with us. You don't take any of it for granted. Of honour of steering the Australian Chamber Orchestra, like the best orchestra in the world.
Well, I mean, there are many great orchestras. This came from a couple of reviews saying this. I don't wake up ever thinking that. I mean, if you do, you either progress or you decay. And so if you start believing that.
Well, I've got to read things. I've got to do my research.
I know. Good. Yeah. It's nice to hear it.
But What is your plans for the future? How are you steering the ACO? Because there will be a day when
Yeah, when I
the-
leave,
the
absolutely.
bus will
Well,
come.
for a start, to have established this is something I'm immensely I'm immensely proud of this, the bricks and mortar. This is our instrument, you know. This is the orchestra's grand instrument, and it is like being inside a violin or a stringed instrument. If you have a look inside an instrument, this is how it feels actually. You go in with a mirror to see if there's a crack or something, and it does feel like this. So there's that. I'm still got this slight obsession about where we are in the world. We're southern hemispherists. They're only percentage of the world's population, 12%. Chile is a long way away. Our cousins over the Tasman, we have no relationship, very little relationship with them. You go to Perth, long way away. Don't laugh. Perth to South Africa. We're really stuck down here on this rock. It's part of our beauty. It's part of our sense of wonder, but it also can be damn frustrating when you're playing, Western music, and also, messaging that you shouldn't be playing Western music. But that's another issue. And we're a long way away. It still takes a good, door to door, 36 hours to get up there, cross the big pond, up to get up there to Western Europe, and there is a certain sense of frustration. There's still a hell of a lot of prejudice against Australians and culture from Western Europe. There's an enormous amount of snobbery, which I laugh at. I mean, the most famous story I have is when I was in Oxford. We're doing a concert, actually one of our first ever concerts in the early 90s, and I stopped an old Don to ask if he could recommend a restaurant nearby, and he said, "Oh, do I detect an Australian accent?" I said, "Yes." "What are you doing here?" And I said, "With an orchestra." "Oh, what's that?" "Australian chamber orchestra." And he said, "That sounds like a contradiction in terms."
How did you respond?
Well, I said, asking for a good restaurant in Oxford, it's a contradiction in terms. Yeah, I tell that story a lot. But the fact that I feel the need to keep on telling the story is indicative of something. Now, this is a maybe insurmountable challenge that I face, but it's one that does plague me and keep me awake at night. And we get extraordinary prejudice against Australian culture, unless it's Indigenous culture, and that has changed, but only in the past 10 years.
What happens to, when you do perform to these audiences?
Oh, then it's totally different. Once we're there in the room playing, people forget the name or the geography. Our very first review in Europe was in German, vom Ende der Welt aber gut. It means from the end of the world, but good. I mean, and I've tried to, it was in Austria, in Vienna, and I've tried to unpack this to a geographicist, as I call them. It's just, I couldn't get through. I said, "But you're saying from the end of the world, but is there really, so you're the top and we're the bottom?" Well, sort of. And I said, "But is that how we all, I mean, like just the atlas, is like that." So this kind of thing, I think about it, and it is a challenge, and it probably won't change in my lifetime. But you know what? In 50 years' time, 100 years' time, if we're all still here, we're going to be wishing for the days when we didn't have that 3-hour flight to Europe.
The distance.
Remember the days when, we were all here.
Yeah.
It was like we were the first to arrive at the party, and Australia was it felt purer. So that's the other part of my brain going, no, just accept it, enjoy it, and be zen about it.
Richard Tognetti, congratulations on 35 years at the ACO.
Stop reminding me.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of 3 Food Memories.